What's up, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Team Chat Podcast of Video Game Show. I'm one of your hosts, Jarrett Wilson, joined to my right by Rachel Mogan.
Buongiorno, buongiorno.
Buongiorno to you as well. How are you this fine day?
You got two today.
That is exciting.
Yeah, that's rare.
Two for the second episode of 2023.
Exactly. I figured like new year, new me, right? And it's going to keep going.
Oh, no.
Every episode.
By the end of the year, people are going to be very
There's
over
gonna
this
be
podcast.
a lot of them. So just strap in
It's
for
like,
that.
hey, I'm joined by
Rachel.
Rachel Mogan, and then it's just
like,
buongiorno, buongiorno, buongiorno. Then the SpongeBob 15 minutes later.
Oh, yes. That would be
Buongiorno,
super
buongiorno,
funny.
buongiorno, 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 and buongiorno.
Put a pin in that. We're going to do that at some point.
But anyway, welcome. Thanks for joining us today for this episode where we are here to talk about video games, the ones we love, the ones we hate, and everything in between. New episodes come out on Thursdays, 9 a.m. Central Time, and you can listen to those on podcast services around the World Wide Web, such as Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, and others. You can also watch a video version of each episode over on our YouTube channel. Links for all that are in the description below. You can also find us on social media at Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. You can also join our Discord server where we have a lot of great conversations about games and non-gaming related topics when we're not here recording the show. You can join that. And also, if you want to help make the show bigger and better, you can head over to patreon.com/teamchatpodcast, where for as little as $1 a month, you can support the show, just like Super Saiyan Ace, Elise F, Zach S, Mariah S, Susan M, James K, Michael B, Andrew M, Michael S, and Brandon W have done. They have all gone over there to support the show, and in return, we're giving them cool perks like giving the episodes early before their general Thursday release, access to a private channel on our Discord server, the Rogues Gallery, special emotes, all this fun stuff. It's great. But you can also support the show for free if you don't want to do that, because we understand that's a commitment. And you can do that by subscribing wherever you listen to or watch the show. Tell your friends, write us a review, all that good jazz. But we are grateful for each and every one of our viewers, listeners, and patrons alike. Heart emoji.
Yeah. Heart emoji. Smooches.
All right.
XOXO.
XOXO, all the love that we can give. It's yours. But it's an exciting day, Mogan.
We haven't done one of these in so long. It's going to be so fun.
I'm so excited.
I feel like we're rusty.
Here we are today. We are going to do another soundtrack spotlight
Another
episode.
music sode.
It's
Finally.
been a minute.
It's been
These
too
are our
long.
favorites because, like,
These
the soundtracks. I newer listeners to the show, I don't know if you know, but like me, like I listen predominantly to soundtracks. That's like all I listen to. So I love video game soundtracks, and so it's been killing me that we haven't been able to talk about them. So yeah, it's gonna be a good time.
We should have had, before we got all settled and comfy, your Katana Zero vinyl to
man.
display because it's so beautiful.
Actually, if you want to just grab it,
let me just grab it.
It's don't forget you got headphones on this time. It's right next to the Last of Us one on my shelf right there.
Oh yeah, there it is.
Sam got me this for Christmas.
And a white sort of deal with it.
It's I'm not doing any Katana Zero music today. Just a little spoiler for you.
I think we've talked about it before, though.
I think we have, but it is beautiful. Got this from Fangamer, but Sam got this for me for Christmas. It's just got like incredible art. Hopefully, that's not just like reflecting and glaring all to hell. But it just looks.
Well, let's just kind of lightly move it around so that
you
at
can
some
maybe
point
see it
people
and
can
stuff.
see it.
Woo! It's pretty.
So fancy.
But yeah, it's very cool. Got some extra fun artwork there.
Ooh, yeah, I like the
back
artwork
as
on the
well.
back.
So it's some great stuff. But anyway, sadly, no, Katana Zero will not be a game that we're talking about today, but it does have a fantastic soundtrack. So go check that out if you haven't heard it. But we're both listening to the headphones because we're trying it a little different this time, where we're going to be listening to the song and talking about the music while we're playing it. So again, to try to throw off the people who want to keep us down.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
That's right. That's what we're gonna. It's all to avoid those copyright claims.
So,
Oh boy.
without further ado, I know we've got a couple of bangers to talk about today.
So you know which two games I'm doing, but I don't know which two games you're doing. So
Exciting.
I want you to start.
Okay, you want me to go first?
Yeah.
This is one. I think it's going to be one that it has been on the top of my mind a lot lately, and I thought about doing this as my second choice, but it's just too good. I have to get right to it immediately, and it is the soundtrack from none other than Cult of the Lamb.
Oh,
by River Boy.
interesting. Okay, by River Boy. All right, let's go for it.
So, Cult of the Lamb, as you know, game came out just last year in 2022 and was a smash hit, one of my favorite games of last year. And one of the big reasons for that is because the soundtrack is just so damn good.
It's very good. quick aside,
Yes.
just because I think it's so funny. So Riverboy is the composer for Cult of the Lamb. Other indie darling that came out that I personally love, Neon White, composed by Machine Girl.
Oh,
Do you
that's
think
funny.
they're friends?
They should
Do you
be.
think they're BFFs?
They absolutely should be if they're not,
God, then I ship them.
because that's incredible. I really love
Yeah,
that.
that's super funny.
But Riverboy is actually the audio director and composer for Cult of the Lamb, and it's very curious. And Riverboy, this might be, looking on Spotify and everything like that, his first video game soundtrack. In the past, he
Wow.
has just released some like house beat, some EPs and stuff like that he's done, some singles and whatnot. But this looks to be his first foray into a full blown soundtrack. But what I love about it is it's just every bit of it just feels so unique. Like the main theme, which is the first song that I'm going to be playing, Praise the Lamb, it is just so unique sounding. It's obviously got like a solid beat and a groove to it, but it has, I don't know, it's almost hard to describe the qualities of it. Like I could, you know what I mean? But it's got this woodwindy kind of like wistfulness to it.
Yeah.
I would say. It also is fun because it incorporates a lot of, which you'll hear it at the very tail end of the clip that I'm going to play. You'll hear a little bit of the vocalizations that your followers make,
Yeah.
which is very interesting. And from now comparing it to his other EPs, that's actually Riverboy, the male
Really?
vocalization voice. Because it matches what's in this song, which matches the voice that I hear in the other EPs.
That's
so
fascinating.
A little bit of research there, a little
Yeah.
bit of insight. So here we
Play it
go.
for me.
Playing the first little bit here. This is about Praise the Lamb is like a 6-minute song.
Oh my God.
We're only playing 30-second segments here. But this is about 3 minutes, 20 seconds into the song of Praise the Lamb. So let's give this a little listen. I love that.
Me too. This is also the main compound music. So when
Right.
you're at your little cultist area, this is the ambient music that plays in the background.
I just love that. Bum, 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 bum,
Me
bum.
too.
Just these little melodies that play throughout with that nice beat.
There's
It's
little
great.
sprinkled in high notes.
And then you'll hear him right here at the end. Right about here.
No kidding, that's him.
That's
I
River
never
Boy.
would have guessed. The boy himself.
Yeah. So I don't.
The boy, the myth, the legend.
It really is, because it's just a soundtrack. I didn't know what music I was expecting Cult of the Lamb to have, but I was kind of anticipating something maybe a little more closer to a Stardew, but maybe a little bit
interesting.
darker, just kind of that more chipper, happy, which this is, especially when you're going around in your compound and everything.
Yeah.
This is a very fun tune to just bop out to.
Yeah.
But it's just, I don't know. I love all those little, like I said while we were listening to it, the little melodies. I like the little vocalizations added into the little that's all the stuff that kind of gives it that whimsy and stuff to it, that feel to it. Love it. Can't get enough.
It's not very present in this particular song, but I do think that Cult of the Lamb soundtrack does a really good job of almost making a certain amount of dissonance in its tracks,
Yeah.
which kind of just gives you that slightly off-kilter feeling of things are really happy and good and everything is
Right.
great, but there's that underlying sense of,
something's
well,
not
it is
right.
actually kind of a sinister cult, and you keep
Right.
sacrificing your followers, and there's kind of death and horror everywhere as you go and decimate other minor gods, I guess,
Yeah.
and slay them from their places of power. So
That's what I was meaning. It's got this this whimsy to it, but there's something else there.
yeah,
and you're right.
just
That
that
dissonance,
undercurrent,
that unedited.
undercurrent of dissonance.
Yeah, the uneasiness to all of it, that there's a little bit more brewing under the surface than what's right
Yeah.
there. And so I really love that stuff. For the second track that I wanted to pick from the Cult of the Lamb soundtrack is another one that actually plays when you're doing a little side mini game. You meet one of the other, actually kind of the guy who's your initial guide to getting you help set up and your cult underway, Ratau. You actually learn this game from him at his hut. It's called Knucklebones.
Knucklebones
It's
was
a
one of
very
my,
fun game.
Love that game. I wish that they would pull a Witcher Gwent and just take Knucklebones out and make it its own whole little campaign game.
I would not be surprised if you could find a Knucklebones set on Etsy.
you surely
Because I've actually was for a little bit, while I was playing the game on the Cult of the Lamb subreddit.
you mean
And
physical
people,
Knucklebones.
Yeah. And people were making Knucklebone sets and posting pictures and stuff. And I was like,
Cool.
man, that would be super fun.
That's fun.
But quick aside, Knucklebones is a dice-based game where each person rolls one die for their turn, and then you have to place it in these 3 different rows that 3 die can fit in, and it's basically like combining the biggest combination of die in those 3 die for each row and trying to get a higher number than your opponent. But you can also like remove your opponent's die if you place the same die in the same row that they have. Like if they have a 5 and you play a 5, their 5 goes away. Anyway.
But the same can happen to you, so you have to be careful.
So it's very fun. It was a really fun little side game to go. You eventually play against different characters in it, but this is the music that plays underneath it. I love it because it has this very fun, almost tavern-esque feel to it. It does. But it also really reminds me of Darren Korb's Bastion soundtrack, or even Pyre a little bit. Okay. So it's very fun for those reasons, but it's also very simple and way more toned down than the Praise Lamb in terms of like what it is. Like it's pretty much just like a guitar with a little like beat in the background, and it sounds even more acoustic. So it's very fun.
This is the most acoustic and the most simple, and I'm saying simple as like
not as a knock,
but it's the most minimalistic track in the entire game.
So let's give a little listen to the first 30 seconds here of Knucklebones. Just that like strumming of the guitar. It's so jaunty.
Something about maybe it's the key or just the tones being used. It actually does sound like kind of intense though, right? You're like,
there's still that urgency to it. You're playing a game. It's a competition.
That's the word I'm looking for.
But it just still like has that like kind of taverny feel to it. Yeah. It could play while you're playing Gwent.
Oh yeah.
So it's just a very fun, light track in an otherwise very sinister game. Yeah,
definitely.
So I had to give a shout out to those couple tracks from the Cult of the Lamb soundtrack. The rest of the soundtrack, though, is fantastic. So go give it a shout. Go give it a listen. And again, that is by Riverboy. So my first one had to start this out with Cult of the Lamb because it's a good soundtrack.
I can't decide which of my 2 I want to start with next because God, I was spoiled for choice. I mean, I feel like just because it's been so long since we did our last music-sode, we're sitting on a mountain of games.
There's a lot.
Just a bunch of new and old stuff that we haven't gotten to talk about yet. So it's like, oh God, where do I go first? I was very tempted to go with Machine Girls Neon White.
Yeah, I was kind of surprised you didn't, having seen your choices.
The reason I didn't go with Neon White is just because I figured it is a more, and this is air quotes, recent game because it's from last summer, 2022. But that means that at least in my mind, the way that I think about it is it will have more longevity for when we do our next music-sode.
That's true.
So I'm kind of going to sit on that one for a future episode. So you're definitely going to hear some of that soundtrack in the future because it is chef's kiss. It is when the moon hits your eye like a big pizza pie. That's Machine Girl.
Oh, damn, that's so good.
Fool. But I
didn't see that coming.
I didn't go with Neon White because there are 2 other games which actually are respectively my game of the year and my game of the year. I didn't really quite realize that Neon White is too. And a big chunk of that has to do with how great the soundtracks are. So let's start with, I guess, the older of the 2. Let's start with Paradise Killer. The best of the best.
Yeah.
So go ahead and play me the first track, Paradise, parentheses, Stay Forever.
Here we go. Ooh. I like that.
Oh, hold up. You don't even know yet, bro.
This sounds like it's starting out 80s, like 80s synth vibe.
80s, yes. It's going to get just more 80s after that.
Or 80s electronic vibe, I should say. Oh my God. That bass slide in?
Oh yeah, the saxes, the brass.
Oh, I love it.
Oh my God. When those brass come in, I just hang on.
Oh,
and then you get a little bit of the vocalist before we have to stop playing the track, which is a shame because it's the woos.
Yeah, that's really good.
It is off the charts incredible, and I am kicking myself that I did not look up who the vocalist is in that song. I know it from a long time ago, so if you're able to find that
I'll
real
give you a
quick.
little Google.
But so that's Paradise, parentheses, Stay Forever. It is actually the only track in the entire game that has lyrics to it. All of the other ones are fully synthwave, retro wave, some are a little bit dark wave. It's a very synthetic soundtrack with a really nice combination of all of these brass instruments, which takes it from what could be a pretty, standard soundtrack to a certain extent. You know, you've got a retro-styled indie game with a lot of sort of sci-fi flavorings sprinkled in there, so a synthwave soundtrack is perfectly in line with that. But when you just layer on that really nice coating of brass instruments on top of that, it takes it from like here to just straight into the stratosphere. And the composer here is Barry, air quotes, Epoch, E-P-O-C-H, Topping. So Barry Topping is from Scotland. He actually, so in an article that I was checking out from Magnetic Mag, he actually describes Paradise Killer as his foot in the door into the video game music scene, meaning this was the first video game that he produced the music for.
Interesting.
How do you knock it out of the park like that on try number one?
Well, so that's very interesting. So, Riverboy, same, with Cult of the Lamb.
Really? No
and then
kidding.
remember also Christopher Madigan, the composer for Cuphead's soundtrack, had never done big band music before.
That's
Slash had
crazy.
never done a soundtrack before. And those are all three
Insane.
amazing soundtracks.
Absolutely insane. But so to his credit, Barry did do a lot of touring beforehand. So he's been a musician, I think, basically his whole life, more or less. So he used to tour with actual bands and go around and, play music around Europe and the UK with them. And then like Paradise Killer came along and he was like, oh, okay, I guess I'll produce the music for this. And it has spun that in, and he spun that into basically a career in video game music. He's working on the music for a game called Sentry, which is very different from Paradise Killer, a totally different scene, but it's going to be very fast-paced, sort of hectic action game. Really interested to hear the soundtrack for that one, and it's coming out March 2023, actually.
Oh, nice.
So Sentry's coming out kind of soon. But Paradise Killer is it's my favorite game for many, many reasons, but the soundtrack is sort of the number one of all of those different factors that go into it. And I think the next track does a little bit of a better job of giving you a more holistic look at how the game sounds and feels when you're actually playing it. Because Paradise, Stay Forever, is sort of the game's launching point of literally you as main character, you physically launch yourself into the island, island number 24, where you're doing your investigation. So it's like this big bombastic intro into the game, but then the game actually starts and you get more tracks like this next one.
All right, here we go. So this one is called House of Bliss.
House of Bliss, yes.
Here we go. You can do no wrong with a solid synth beat.
You really can't. It's
I
so
love
fun.
it. Like this style, especially, is my favorite.
It really is. Like any game that has something like this, and I feel like this track does a really good job, and Paradise too, they both do a great job of giving you that sort of 80s Miami tropical feel.
Which is
to
exactly
it.
from like all the art of this game. Exactly what this game is trying to sell.
I mean,
that vibe.
it takes place on an island, but that island is in a pocket dimension where a bunch of people that sacrifice human beings to horrible cosmic gods make their paradise.
Sure.
So it kind of like with Cult of the Lamb, it's that situation of, well, you have this very glitzy, glamorous setting, but there's absolutely that undercurrent happening, but just beneath the surface of, oh, all of this is actually built on terrible horror.
Right.
And there are a lot of other tracks in the game that sort of play more into that sense of terror and horror, especially when bad shit's going down in the game. And even though it's very pixelated and very retro aesthetically, you still get some pretty grimy, gross sections of the game where you're like, oh god, this is terrible, and the music just plays to that over and over again. But House of Bliss, I mean, I think it's Last XX or something like that. What's the other one that I was gonna do? Heartstopper, maybe? There's so many. Oh, Midori Eyes, they're all so good. You can do no wrong with the soundtrack. And something that's really interesting about Paradise Killer is, as you're playing the game, you actually go around and collect soundtracks.
Oh.
Like, as you find more of them, the playlist for the game opens up. So
That's
unlike
cool.
a lot of other games, which are, the music is very much tied to a location or it's tied to an event, that isn't necessarily the case with Paradise Killer. You go around, you collect soundtracks, your playlist gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and it keeps looping the longer you play.
Interesting.
So all of these tracks basically had to have the ability to fit into every scenario, more or less, which that's got to be a difficult feat all on its own.
For sure.
And then to take all of those tracks and make a cohesive and B, non-repetitive soundtrack where each track feels very distinct but still very much married to the others in its playlist. Oh my god, just what an amazing feat. My only complaint about the game, there should have only been Paradise Stay Forever and all the other tracks should have been omitted and it just should have played on an endless loop through the whole game, but that would have been too much of a good thing. So yeah, Barry Epoch Topping's Paradise Killer soundtrack is the 10 out of 10 of 2021, 2022 and 2023, and if you haven't listened to it yet, you absolutely have to. Actually, didn't it come out in 2020?
Yeah, I feel like Paradise Killer
it was
might
my
have been.
2020 game of the year. That's right. Time.
No, I need to go back and listen to the whole thing because, man, I know I listened to a bit when you were first talking about the game, but this just reminded me of how damn good that is. I got to give it a whole.
I'm pretty sure that one of our patrons and friend of the show and just all around cool guy Waves, I think he has the Paradise Killer limited release vinyl, which I desperately
really
want.
cool.
I want it so bad. Might have to kill him for it. But yeah, so
and be the
very
subject of
jealous
the next
of that.
Paradise Killer sequel.
Oh God, what a fun time that would be. So the developer of
him.
Paradise Killer, Kaizen Gameworks, my God, if they're not working on a Paradise Killer, even just spiritual sequel,
Sure.
I will sue. I need more of that game now. But yes, so that's my Paradise Killer picks, and God, you can do no wrong. So go in there, listen to the soundtrack. You will have yourself a darn good time.
Very cool. The additional vocals were by Fiona Lynch.
Thank you, Fiona Lynch. I knew the name, but I just couldn't remember it. Yeah, she's incredible, and that song just blows your mind every time.
Oh, it was so good.
Very good job.
Well, my second pick and last pick for this episode is a game that was incredibly fun to play. But the music really stood out to me because while, yes, video game soundtracks have moved up from their early days of being the pure like chiptune 8-bit style of music and everything like that to the full orchestral scores of today that we get, there are still ones that stand out in that regard that seem to be a step above what you normally would hear in a game. And this is one of those soundtracks in that it feels, maybe because the game itself feels like this, that you could have pulled this soundtrack from the latest animated adventure film from Pixar, DreamWorks, which actually makes a lot of sense considering who the composer is. The game, though, that I'm talking about, any guesses, any ideas?
Gosh, like I almost had guesses until you threw Pixar into the
Oh,
mix.
okay.
Now I really don't know.
Well, the game that I'm talking about is Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart. Composed.
I never would have guessed that.
It was
Not
kind of
in
a
million
left
years.
field pick for
Jeez.
me, I will say.
Wow, good pick though.
But Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart by Mark Mothersbaugh and Wataru Hokoyama. Now, Mark Mothersbaugh is a film composer, has done a lot of movies before. Some of the highlights, more recent highlights, is Thor Ragnarok, which has a
okay.
very big 80s synth vibe too, kind of tying into the Paradise Killer there vibe for us. But he also did the music for Mitchell's vs. the Machines, which is that Netflix animated movie.
I heard that was so good.
I haven't seen it, but
Me neither.
same thing. I heard nothing but good things.
I'm one of those people that saw the trailer and thought, that looks stupid. And then everyone that I know said, it's amazing.
I know,
It's
which
like,
I even really
okay.
wanted to see because I know Abby Jacobson of Broad City fame and stuff, it does one of the voices. And so I'm like, she's great and hilarious. So like, I want to watch it. But regardless, that when I saw that he had done the music for this, I was like, makes complete sense because this, I don't know, it just has that extra
something.
that extra special sauce to it. And, you know, mostly because it just, the Ratchet and Clank games, especially Rift Apart, was this huge, you know, epic adventure where you're going to all these different weird locations,
worlds.
but it's also this like space adventure where there's supposed to be that grandeur of it and everything and all of it. And this, you know, of course you're part of this, like these like special, like I'm now completely blanking on it, but like with Commander or Captain Quark, you know, you're with his like space rangers and everything. So
It's
like,
very Buzz Lightyear almost.
it is.
Yeah.
It really is. So that's
Buzz
what
Lightyear while he was still brainwashed.
Right.
Not after he got cool.
but like when he was still of Star Command.
Yeah.
But so it does kind of have that like almost Toy Story vibe to it. Well, not really Toy Story vibe, but kind of that like Buzz Lightyear Star Command vibe to it. Where it is this like, big space adventure filled with colorful characters and expressive,
the pomp and circumstance of it all.
And so it like really has that weight to it. But what I love is that it is this like sci-fi space adventure. So there is this like this electronic element to it as well. In fact, there are a lot of sounds that just are like, you'll hear a little bit in this first song that are really like more beep and bloopy kind of like kind of stuff in it, which sounds more like computery and it has that tech. But then there is just an impressive layering on top of all that of strings, horns, and just gives it this just it's this epic feel.
Yeah, I wanna hear it.
The first track that I'm going to
stop
play,
talking, Jared.
I just got to build it up. The first track that I'm playing is Blizar Primed and Ready. Blizar Prime is one of the locations you visit. This song starts with a very like big, like low and slow trumpet, just kind of like, it just kind of seems like, it honestly kind of sounds something almost out of Halo, just this like really like da 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 swelling kind of sound to it.
Sort of meandering in a certain
kind of meanders,
sense.
but then it very quickly picks up pace and builds into this. So it's starting to kind of build up. You got that horn. But
Now that you say it, it actually does sound very Halo.
right?
Yeah, you're not wrong about that.
But then, what's that? Adventure.
Oh, I love that.
Got the hurried strings, the fast
the
strings.
hurried strings that make you feel like you're twisting down a funnel,
Yes.
like into something big. Oh,
And then it's going to open up here.
this track fucking rules.
Right? It's so good. Soaring strings. Adventure awaits everywhere. And it just
This is
continues to build and layer upon that same feel the whole way through
That's
this
a
track.
banging track,
It is
man.
a fantastic track. I'm pretty sure I might even have this on my like running playlist.
I feel jazzed now.
Right?
I feel like if I were running to that song, I might have a minor heart attack because I would be like too amped up.
Oh yeah,
it would just take
you
me
are
out.
setting personal records on that run for sure.
Oh, man, yeah,
But
that's a good
it just
one.
really like just keeps pacing, and I don't know, just something about that feels like, I know even they made a Ratchet and Clank movie, but like it just feels like the two you could just like taken this from this game and put it to the movie and it would have worked.
Yeah.
I don't know. It just has that like that Pixar animated movie feel to the soundtrack, and I don't know if I'm explaining that well enough,
I get
or
it.
if it's picking it up on that, but like that's how it just feels to me. And I don't know, just something about that just hits all the right notes.
I
for
mean,
me, and
that
it's
very
perfect.
like driving percussion line.
Yeah.
And then when you just layer on those sick, like very urgent sounding strings,
Mm-hmm.
it really does just make it next level.
Which, and you even said it, like swirling down a funnel is so perfect, because in this game you are like jumping so quickly in between these riffs in different dimensions, and there's all this action and stuff happening around you. It just fits that chaos so perfectly of what's happening in this game.
And isn't that what video game soundtracks are all about?
Right.
Making it to where you can pick up on maybe even story beats, even though you haven't played the game, just by
Right.
listening to the tracks. You can get a good sense of what's happening
Mm-hmm.
and the action that's going on around you. That's a good soundtrack.
It is. So for my second pick in this one, it's kind of similar, little bit more of an action track again there, but just another styling.
And I mean, that's not Ratchet and Clank's fault. It is an all action, all the time kind of game.
Oh, yeah,
There's
yeah, yeah.
not a lot of downtime in
Oh
Ratchet
yeah.
and Clank.
You get a couple cinematics, and you're back into another
Yeah,
action
you're back
packed
at
level. So it's a good time. So this other track that I wanted to play is "Glitch in the System." Again, getting those like fun trumpets.
That really low brass. Love that.
Oh, but picking up again.
Ooh, we have a tempo shift.
And this one feels a little bit more like leans into. You hear a little bit of those more like electronic sound in the background.
Yeah. The bleeps
That, like,
and bloops, if you will.
Boom, boom, boom.
Oh, and like the little laser sounds.
Yeah.
Love that.
And the fast-paced trumpets there to take us out.
It's
just
fantastic.
it's such a good soundtrack, and just in what all the different like stylings and the variations that come through it. Is just a very high-paced, high-action soundtrack. It just really is driving. It's a blend of fantastic like melodies.
So
It's
I have to
great.
say, if you had played me both of those tracks and I didn't know what game they were from, with the first one, what Primed and Ready?
Yeah, Blizar primed and ready.
Blizar?
Yeah.
Blizar Primed and Ready, I would probably not have been able to guess Ratchet and Clank. The second one, I actually might have, because I feel like that addition of those sort of technological ambient sounds, like the lasers and just sort of the bleeps and bloops.
Yeah.
There's not a better
Yeah.
word for it. The bleeps and bloops in the background. That might have clued me into it, because when I think of Ratchet and Clank, even though Rift Apart has these very lush worlds that you can go and travel around to, I still kind of think back to the first game, where it was pretty much just like these dingy, spacey metal, just out in the middle of nowhere, the depths of space sort of vibe.
Well, it's
And
all about
those-
like picking up
yeah.
like gears and
Yeah,
like fixing
exactly.
things and stuff like that too.
And so that's what I really associate with Ratchet and Clank. And I feel like even though it's the newest game, that second track fits my personal like audio connection to Ratchet
Sure,
and Clank
sure.
a lot better.
To be fair, Blizar primed and ready starts, and I do think in those low trumpets, the slower build to it at the beginning. I always hear it, the more Halo-y part. I always hear it, and I'm like, oh man, this is really good. Which? Oh, this is a Halo. Which one is this from? And I like never connects until it like speeds up, and I'm like, oh wait, this is Ratchet and Clank.
Yeah.
It's so fun too how it kind of like throws that twist at you where you think it's from something else.
Remind me who the composer for Halo was.
Martin O'Donnell and Michael
Martin
Salvatore.
O'Donnell and Michael Salvatore. I always get them and Mick Gordon confused just because of the M's. I don't know
Yeah.
why. It just happens. But yeah, amazing. 10 out of 10.
So yeah, those are my two choices for this week's episode of Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart and Cult of the Lamb. So Mogan, what's your final one to take us home?
It's got to be my 2022 game of the year, even though it came out in 2021. So chronologically speaking, the three games that I was going to do were Paradise Killer 2022, Death's Door 2021, and Neon White 2022, and they were all technically my game of the year for the
Sure.
year that they came out. But yeah, so I want to talk about the Death's Door soundtrack because it's one of the tracks that Paradise Killer 2, I definitely do this with Paradise Killer, but Death's Door, man, I feel like as a whole, I've never really heard another soundtrack that I think does as good of a job complementing its material. And I feel like part of the reason it does such a great job of that is because David Fenn, the composer, is also one of the game's producers, audio designers, he's the composer, and something else, like his list O credits, because it's a really small indie game, right? Oh no, did I not hit send on that stupid note? Damn it. I'm
Whoops.
such an idiot. But anyway, so he has many, many credits on the game. It's really a co-effort between him and Mark something is the other sort of co-creator of Death's Door. They're both the developers at Acid Nerve. So Acid Nerve is the developer behind Death's Door. Their really main previous title that people might know them for is Titan's Souls, Titans with an apostrophe S. Titan's Souls, which came out in, I think, 2015. And then I think in an interview with some magazine that I'm not going to remember at
Mark
this point.
Foster is the other guy.
Mark Foster, yes, thank you. In either an interview with a digital magazine or something like that, they described that they got really burned out after making Titan Souls, and that they had kind of maybe done some conceptual thinking about their next game, and maybe it was going to sort of have a crow in it. They weren't really sure. And then flash forward a few years, and you wind up with Death's Door.
Right.
It does share quite a few audio similarities with Titan Souls. I think one of the tracks, Avarice, might even be a remix or like a redo of a track that was in Titan Souls, because when you go to Avarice's like YouTube video and look at the comments, people are like, Titan Souls, this is from Titan Souls, which is why I didn't pick Avarice, because I wanted to have a very unique look into what Death's Door sounds like. But to its credit, Avarice fucking slaps. I wanted to include it so bad, but A, I couldn't really find 30 seconds that I thought encapsulated the whole song well enough, so I was getting frustrated. And B, Death's Door has, 100 other odd tracks that are equally as incredible. So let's start with the first one, Ceramic Manor.
This is so much slower
Oh, yeah. It's
than I
very slow.
anticipated. This is more like Hollow Knight. vibe to me.
I totally
I was
get it.
honestly anticipating something more.
Wait. That little harpsichord?
Yeah,
You don't get much harpsichord these days.
you don't. It's a tragedy.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Yeah. Oh, God, it's so good.
Have you ever listened to? He's this pianist, composer guy.
Mozart?
Or songwriter. No.
God, what if
although
you'd said Mozart?
That would have been hilarious.
Have you ever
heard of Johann Sebastian Bach?
That would have been so
Little
funny.
known composer
Little-
from
lesser
way
known
back
composer.
when. But no, it's this guy. He's known professionally, or like is it just Giovanni? And he's like an Italian guy. I want to say like the first time I heard his music was he was a concert that was shown on PBS when I was growing up. But anyway,
No.
his music, for those of you, if you're Giovanni fans, I've also seen him like doing an infomercial trying to sell from
Oh my
like
God.
roll-out keyboard later on, like a piano keyboard. But anyway, neither here nor there. That sounded like that could have been a music from him. So if there are any
Really?
Giovanni fans out there in the world,
Fascinating.
like it sounds very much Destiny, I believe, is the album that I listened to of his. So it sounds like stuff from that. But that is not at all what I anticipated that
No,
music was going to sound like.
It's really not. So Death's Door is this just fantastic blend of both the very dark.
Woof.
Whoa.
Bird is a woofing.
Yeah, Birdie is a woofing up a storm. It's a blend of the very dark because it's all about death. That's the underpinning of the whole game. It is about death. You go around reaping souls and then you bring them back to the mundane. You bring them back to your little bureaucratic office and you turn them in and you get stuff in return, mixed with these magnanimous moments of, I feel like that's really not the right word for it, but that's the word that I wanted to say, mixed with these incredible highs from parts of the game that are very different from Ceramic Manor. But Ceramic Manor does such a good job of, I feel like it's sort of purpose in the game is to be your first official foray into going and reaping a giant soul. So the Ceramic Manor is the home of the Ceramic Witch, I think, the Urn Witch of the Urn Witch. And when you get onto her estate, there are different variations of sort of her theme that play throughout. So first you're on the grounds and it's this very acoustic feeling, it's very calming even, but then you get inside the Ceramic Manor and this track plays, just this very pared down piano track with these mostly the harpsichord.
That's a nice
Who's
touch.
putting harpsichord in game music these days? Nobody, except for David Fenn, who was like, you know what, this needs some harpsichord. And really most of the tracks in the game aren't like Ceramic Manor, which I think is what makes it stand out so much, is that it is so subdued, and when you're walking through the manor itself, it feels cavernous, it feels empty. It feels like nobody's lived there for hundreds of years, which is sort of true to a certain extent. And it does such a good job of sort of giving you this feeling that this house used to be a home, but it's not anymore. Something has happened to change that. So it has this bittersweet feeling to it, but it's also beautiful and elegant. It's just an incredible track, and this is one of the ones that I will do the extended, like 1 hour loop on and just listen to it over and over again while I'm working, because it's such a good work track. If you just need to get in the zone and have a chill time, Ceramic Manor on loop is superb for that.
Yeah, that was incredibly chill.
But the next track I want to talk about, I feel like might fit what you sort of think Death's Door would sound like.
Okay.
So let's listen to The Old Watchtowers.
Here we go.
This might be my favorite one in the game.
Okay, but still not at all what I was
those
anticipating.
building chords though.
Love
And then the strings come in.
Ooh.
And then
Damn!
God, it's so
That
good.
is so good.
It really does like pull at my heartstrings. I feel like I'm gonna have a heart attack.
That piano in that song is so good.
Oh, it's so
But
good.
that's still not at all what I was
You're
anticipating.
a fool then, and you need to play Death's Door.
I don't know. I was just anticipating it being more like, I don't know, more Cult of the Lamb almost.
So, no, not at all.
More in like the energy of it.
Oh,
Not
yeah.
necessarily the sound, but like the energy.
So Death's Door soundtrack really it brings again, it's that marriage between sort of the somber is really kind of the word that I'm looking for. It's that marriage between a somber feeling that naturally comes with death mixed with these incredibly lively pieces that come into the music, like when those strings come in or when the higher trills on the piano come in the old watchtowers. It gives you this feeling of expansiveness and of energy. And in the old watchtowers specifically, the setting for this is that you've come from the lowest of the low. You've basically just come from the swamp from a storytelling perspective. And then instead of going down into the bogs, into the swamps, you are climbing up and up and up into these frosty, ice-crusted mountains. So those really crystalline piano tones, I feel, do such a good job of evoking sort of that windswept vibe of an icy mountaintop.
Yeah.
It does such a good job of complementing its source and what it's trying to do, and I just can't think of any other soundtrack. So I would, like in my personal ranking, if we were to someday do, why have we never done a top 10 soundtrack?
I think because we were scared. I feel like
oh my God. I mean, we could at least talk about them.
I feel like we did.
Make a note about that somewhere. Anyways, so in my personal ranking, I feel like right now, if you were to ask me what's the best video game soundtrack out there, I would probably say Death's Door. And then I would say Paradise Killer. But they are just neck and neck, and they do such different things with the sounds that they're using and the tones that they're going for. But the Death's Door soundtrack is just... beautiful is the best word to describe it. It's truly beautiful.
Okay, we have done a top 10 video game soundtrack ranking before.
Really? When?
2 years ago. So
2 years ago?
It's been a while. And
was
I mean,
on
we
it?
definitely weren't, I don't think we were playing stuff
Oh, no, we probably weren't. We were probably
through it.
just
We were
discussing.
just like talking
Yeah.
and discussing.
What's on the list?
I don't know. I'm going to have to go back and listen to this
we
now.
should go back and listen to it.
Actually, I wonder if I could find it here in my notes. Like my old podcast notes and stuff
Oh,
like that.
Wind Waker was definitely on mine. I can tell you that for sure. Wind Waker was probably on there.
I mean, I know, like-
Okami was probably on there.
I feel like I would definitely have like Last of Us and things like that.
If I didn't do it in that episode, I definitely talked about Phendrana Drifts from Metroid Prime at one point, probably in one of our older music-sodes.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah. Anyways, Death's Door frankly dunks on all of them. So yeah, David Fenn at Death's Door at Acid Nerve. Good Christ, I cannot wait for them to eventually make another game. I don't care how long it takes. Willing to wait. It is a truly stellar soundtrack.
Okay, I actually did find my list.
What was on it?
And wow, yeah, this needs to change.
Is it out? Do all these games just?
It's outdated. I mean, they're great. Like I think I have mine. This list, and yeah, I can't tell when this is. Yeah,
Was my list on there?
April 11th is when I made this
wow.
rank. So it's old.
Oh, Paradise Killer wouldn't have been out then.
Right.
Ooh.
Or you hadn't played Death's Door and all this stuff. So yeah, we're gonna have
God.
to revisit this.
Yeah, redo.
We might not do like a full like multi-series because that was like a four part series that we did. Maybe not that extensive, but yeah, we should try to redo this because I have mine here, starting from 10 going to 1. Donkey Kong Country, Red Dead Redemption 2, Stronghold, The Last of Us, Doom, God of War, 2018, Assassin's Creed 2, Halo 2, Ori and the Blind Forest, Witcher 3, Wild Hunt.
Wow. Huh.
So, like, all those are fantastic, but I would
But they
definitely
are
have
very
some,
different.
I would have some changes.
Yeah, I feel like now there would be some big changes to that.
there would be some changes for sure.
Anybody go back and listen to that episode and be like, wow, what a bunch of idiots. They didn't include this, and this. Because it was the time.
Yeah.
We didn't know. We didn't know it
There's
was
so
coming.
much new good stuff out there.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we'll have to revisit that for sure. I completely forgot we even did that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that was a fantastic jump back in to our soundtrack spotlight episodes, and man, did it feel good to talk about some soundtracks again.
Do we have the ability to make Spotify playlists?
Yes.
We should make a playlist of just putting all
I
of
actually
these
have
together.
an
Yeah.
old one that's for, even when we did it before. That was any soundtrack that we talked about did soundtrack
yeah,
spotlight.
that's
That it's there.
right.
So I will reshare the link for that to anybody who wants it. Or I'll just put it in our Discord and stuff like that so you can get it and go listen to some of our past ones because there have been some excellent songs that we've talked about in the past, and there are going to be some even better ones that we talk about in the future.
You know what might be a fun idea to do for the next music-sode? Maybe instead of doing our personal picks, we should ask our listeners for suggestions, and then we listen to those and talk about them from sort of a a bystander's
Ooh,
perspective.
that would be really
because
good.
I would be interested to sort of talk about music for games that I personally have not played.
That would be a really
I
good
feel like
idea.
that might get some different ideas and some different opinions going.
That's an
So
excellent
everybody
idea. I
put
like
a
that,
pin in
yeah.
that, everybody.
Send us some ideas
Yeah.
over in the Discord,
That could be
or
fun.
comment below on this video wherever you're listening to or watching.
Like
you know
we've
what I mean?
never talked about the music of Bloodborne, for example.
Oh, yeah,
but
that's
it's got some
true.
bangers in there.
That is true.
In a different way.
And now
Not
there's
in
like
the Death
Elden
Story.
Ring. I haven't listened to
Oh,
Elden Ring
yeah.
music at all, but like
They're all the same.
It's
They're
all
all
the same.
they're obviously not. We're just kidding. We know they're not all the same.
But no, it has been great talking about some music again. Of course, always let us know your favorite soundtracks out there. We have a whole soundtracks channel over on our
Yeah.
Discord. So if
Put
you
'em in
have
there.
any of your favorite tracks or full albums, let us know. We love to listen to that
We
stuff.
really do.
So please share away. Go nuts. But with that, everybody, I think that concludes this episode of Team Chat Podcast. Come back next week for another exciting episode. But until then, I'm one of your hosts, Jarrett Wilson, joined by Rachel Logan.
Adios.
We'll see you all next time.